Best of r/malicious compliance episode 6. Please send a message to r/malicious compliance explaining why you'd like to be a moderator and what you bring to the table. Locking so we can go through and figure out who we should invite on. Thank you. Next. My boomer AF mom is always concerned about Facebook and Google and the FBI tracking you and selling your data. While this is true, there are a number of tools you can use to combat it. When she got to hand me down Galaxy S7, I wanted to set it up so that she could have it backed up and location turned on, but she was like, I don't want all that, it's just there to mine my data. Even when I explained it'll help her locate her lost phone or retrieve any data, she won't budge. So I turned everything off, location, backups, all that, per her request. Today was the day she learned the hard way. She came out to get me from the eye appointment, and her phone fell face first on the rough ground. She then ran over it with the car, I believe. Either way it doesn't look great. She then was missing her phone, and I tried to locate it with Find My Phone, but the device didn't show up. We go back to the clinic, and there it is. Screen cracked and digitizer broken. She lost photos, contacts, text threads, etc. And now she has to downgrade to an old burner phone. Okay boomer. This was of your own doing. Edit. She was warned multiple times. Every time she denied. And we primarily used iPhone, so by the time I switched to Android the SD card was being phased out. I didn't have a spare on hand more than 8 GB, because this was a hand-me-down phone. And the reason why I'm indifferent about it is because she's kind of a controlling, entitled mom. I didn't say this to her face, but that's just how I felt, and I accept if I'm wrong. Thank you. Next. At one point, I was working for an employer who operated on a project basis. In simple terms, my exact duties depended on the project and needs of the client. Well, on one sub-project, split from and outlasting the original, I was the second person put on the task. We had a limited number of people who could be placed on the task, for logistical reasons. For simplicity's sake, I'll describe the task as follows. Examine item A. Place item A in bucket 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on its qualities. Move to item B. As is often the case, the qualities that should determine whether an item goes into a given bucket were vaguely defined, and highly subjective/open to interpretation. A common principle followed by the employer is to emphasize consistency. That way if something isn't right, at least it's consistently not right, which makes it easier to find the wrongly categorized items when you go back later. So if the interpretation of a given subjective criteria says put item in 2, all items meeting that criteria go in 2, which means if they determine that criteria should have qualified it for 3, they know they don't have to look through 1 and 4 for all the mistakes, and can focus their efforts. Normally this policy is pretty solid, but the degree of subjectivity was significantly higher than usual, and the first person assigned to it, whom I replaced, had set the criteria I was told to continue using. I suggested to them that the person before me had set criteria that effectively didn't make any sense to anyone but them, and I suspected they would end up redoing the entire project if they did not reevaluate. They did not reevaluate. I was instructed to continue using the prior individual's criteria. I complied. 4 months of 60 hours a week later, I finished the project. 2 weeks later, they asked me to explain the criteria, because the categorization made no sense, and the resulting buckets of data were unusable for the client, and the usual consistency rule did not help. 2 weeks after that, I began the project all over again. Thank you. Next. I used to work in the leisure industry as a lifeguard. Part of our morning routine was to spot check all of the toilet facilities, make sure they're clean, change toilet rolls, fill soap, that sort of thing. So after doing all of this, my manager brings me up into the office. You haven't been filling the soap dispensers properly. There's an inch gap in all of them. The lids on these dispensers fill some of the space of the interior, which causes the soap to rise, not like we refill them when needed anyway. If I fill it any further it will spill onto the floor. I don't care about excuses, just do as I say. Sure. 12 dispensers full to the brim. I put the lids on and they spill all over the floors and sinks. Slightly smiling face. Thank you. Next. TL. Doctor at the bottom because I am going to relish in giving some background to this story, which just unfolded in the last 24 hours. I work for a boss who is absolutely abysmal, with a co-worker who is reprehensible professionally. Our organization is remote, and both struggle very much in this environment, and admit that they have difficulty organizing themselves, keeping track of priorities, managing multiple balls on the court at once, etc. I am an organizational development manager, so helping staff with resources and training to solve these problems is a part of my job. My team also knows full well that these are not problems I have, and I am well known to be someone with a detail and logistics-oriented mind. So, a few months back, my boss asked me to source a project management tool and get it all set up so that we could keep track of our work better. This was all fairly straightforward and simple on my end, though I did expend time and effort programming the whole thing with the team in mind. How they work, what they work on, how we like to report our progress, etc. And creating some automations and integrations that make using this tool super simple, quick, and dummy-proof. One of the boards I built for the team is one to track tickets, requests from other staff and vendors that come in, since these were an area where the team struggled to stay on the same page and get things done on time. Over time, my boss in particular has used this board to manually add tickets. Things that were not requested by anyone. Things that are just part of our everyday jobs. Things that she just wanted to see done. Often things that we were all already working on or had already completed. This sticks in my craw because I believe in using the right tool for the job. And that's not what we made this area for. But, okay, whatever. In the interim, everyone but me has also sucked ass at notating appropriately in the system. Dates and categories, which completely screws over the reporting I'm required to do on things like turnaround time, request type counts, and so forth. Again, whatever. So, I'm pretty miserable with the system at this point because they both suck at using it, but I can't be all that surprised. Well, last night, my boss texts us that we are to start putting everything we do into the ticketing system, and that she really needs accurate information on what we are doing. I have a couple of reactions to this. First, you can't be serious. Micromanaging makes me furious. Second, this is only because she is incapable of managing effectively, and half the time does not know what her own staff is working on. Third, this is not what I built this for. Lastly, I have an educated suspicion that this comes as a result of recent downsizing org-wide, which included our department. The international brand of our company cannot handle how much our department costs, and they are eager to slash it and looking for justification and so forth by examining our output, and she is desperate to prove we are worth our salaries, most notably, hers, which is 50% greater than the next highest in the entire US branch and more than double the next highest on her team. It is in the six figures. We are in our team. I'm incredibly annoyed by this new policy, but I'm also interviewing heavily elsewhere and hoping to be gone by December anyway, and really enjoying plotting ways to make her and my co-workers' lives miserable. So, okay, I'll log every single thing. New logs send alerts to their emails and their phones. Last night alone, I logged 45 tasks. Did I send cards to staff who won team awards? Yep. And you better bet I logged every single card for each of 10 staff separately. I also do work for another division that boss and co-worker often ignore because it does not relate to them. Did I log every single minute task I did for that division, that they will not care to know? Oh, hell yes. And the best part is that this type of granular detail is something they fully believe is part of my personality, because this is what they imagine efficient work looks like. Because they're idiots who do not understand efficacy, so it all seems completely innocent on my part. This has all gone even better than I planned. I had hoped to just annoy them, my boss especially, as the person who deigned to implement such a policy. Late this morning, we had a snarky, passive-aggressive text from co-worker asking for clarification of what constituted a ticket, in clear response to the fact that I had taken the logic of this policy to the point of utter absurdity. This alone pleased me because it proved my point, but what was better was that when I played dumb, I just thought I would put everything to be safe. My boss showered me with fucking praise. I had hoped to annoy her, but it turns out to be even more satisfying to annoy the shit out of my coworker and be rewarded for it in front of her. While my boss, if annoyed, could have told me to stop, my coworker has no recourse but to send snarky text messages. My heart sang. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this for at least the rest of the week, or, if the universe shines upon me, for the next 2-3 weeks until leaving for a new, much less ridiculous job. TL. Doctor, boss asks us to log everything we do. I take her at her word and flood boss and co-worker with log notifications while adding line items for ridiculous minutiae of my day. Co-worker is furious and boss has to praise me for my thorough consideration. Edit. I should add, since it seemed to come up in a lot of comments, we are not project managers, though I do have PM certification, and we are not hourly/billable staff, we are salaried. I feel like this does sort of clarify, at least a bit, why this request would feel so ridiculous. Down in the comments section, I did add some context that sheds light on my opinion of my boss. I sort of glossed over this in the body of the post for brevity, but evidently folks really don't want to take my word for it that's awful, and instead prefer to assume that I am. I am well aware that, 1. Horrible bosses are a thing most people end up dealing with at some point, and that 2. My plot was maybe petty and definitely vindictive, malicious kind of being the operative term here. Thank you. Next. TL. Doctor, Dad maliciously complies himself. My dad, Gary, and my brother, Michael, names changed, were having an argument as to whether or not a certain cup was glass or plastic. You know those cups which are double glazed which feel plastic but are actually glass? Usually used for hot drinks because it doesn't heat up the outside layer? That's the one. Anyways, the conversation went something like this. Michael, I got these new glasses. They're cool, right? Gary, these things? These are plastic. Michael, no, it's glass. My dad, Gary, is an electrical engineer and does know his materials. Gary, trust me, I know what plastic feels like. Gary, I'm going to prove you wrong and I will drop this from standing height and show you that it doesn't break because plastic won't break. Michael, go ahead. Obviously he drops it and it shatters into 1,000 pieces. The family sitting around the table erupts into laughter. Tears are shed. Fireworks explode in the background. Anyways, Dad learned that his stubbornness can lead to negative consequences. Edit. Changed acronyms to names. Thank you. Next. This didn't happen to me, but to a teacher of mine when I was a sophomore in high school. My freshman and sophomore year, I was in my school's game design academy. Basically you'd have the game design class, and your schedule would be formatted to have classes with other people in the academy. And my freshman year, we had a game design event with other schools in the area called Gamma Fest. It was pretty interesting. We had a Smash tournament, competed to see who could create the best Mario Maker level, various concept and art contests, and the like. The first year went without a hitch. However, it was next year that was the problem. The school board told my teacher, who also organized the entire event, that this year, the event needed to include digital art and media students, to which my teacher protested, but the school board won, and told him that he also needed to change the name. So, he came up with the name, Gaming and Media Entertainment Festival. That might not have been exactly it, as it was a while ago, but you get the general idea, or G-A-M-E, Fest for short. The board wasn't happy about it, but they were forced to take it as it described the event perfectly.